Hello and good morning. It's really nice to see you all again, even though I don't see you. I know you're out there and that feels really good. I am Anita Pebbles, talking about stuff that I'm passionate about with people who can answer my questions and talk about it even more. And I'm here with Emily Quandt, co-founder and facilitator of Free to Learn, which is an Agile community where the children have 100% control over their education. And we are talking about what that is and what that all means with Emily, who has spent the last 4 years inside that sort of free school culture. I myself would like to see that concept grow, and Emily is doing the actual growing of such communities. Hello, my friend, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, how are we doing today?
Good. Real good. Hanging in there. Doing all the stuff and things.
Doing all the what things?
The stuff and things.
Yes, doing all the stuff and things. Let us dive right in to this next question that I've been excited about since last week. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Give it to me.
How do students prioritize their interests and goals?
Ooh, how do they prioritize them? So there's like an infinite number of ways that they can prioritize them. We don't have any priority tracking mechanisms explicitly built into any of the tools that we use. But that being said, students have hacked and adapted the tools. So for example, building swim lanes into their Kanbans so they can prioritize their intentions. Like, if something is at the top of their board versus at the bottom, then they know that that's like raised to the top in essence. And it isn't something that we necessarily came up with, but they figure out those little hacks. So they prioritize them if they so desire. And sometimes they create new tools. So often they'll set personal goals that they've realized on their own or through conversations with facilitators, and they prioritize activities that move them toward their goals. So like most of us do whenever we want something. And then they reflect on how they're choosing to spend their time. So that is basically the way that they do it, which is pretty much the way that an adult does it, right? You're like, if you spent the time, your day, and at the end of the day, you didn't feel like you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, you reflect on it and you say, that sucked. I didn't get what I want done. And then the next day, that thing that you wanted to do raises up a little bit to the top. So the kids do it in exactly that same way.
Okay, thank you. Now, there were a couple of things you mentioned that I think we should dissect a little bit more. Tools, new tools, and Kanbans. Can you please explain these things in whatever fashion you'd like?
Yes, so Kanban is a Japanese word which just means a board to organize things upon. And it doesn't have to be a physical board. It can also be an online source, like Trello is an online organizing tool, basically. And there's a bunch of other Kanban formats. And a Kanban is basically something that you can get the thoughts out of your head and up in front of you so that you kind of like leave room in your head for other bits of creative work or relationship work or whatever other things you want to do. You don't have to hold all that stuff in your head all the time. So they organize, we do our days, we do our schedules, we do field trips, we basically do like everything as a Kanban. So if there's something that we want to do, we're going to write that idea on a Post-it note and we're going to post it up on a board. And it's going to be there, and it might have several elements, right? So you can think of like doing your taxes, for instance. So something that we're going to do as adults, we want to get this project done, and so we're going to write taxes are done, right? Well, there's an almost infinite number of tasks smaller than get the taxes done that you could break that out into. So then we're going to say get the taxes done is a project, but that entails like digging up the medical files and, like all these things, waiting for this to come in, waiting for that to come in, making sure that everything is in order. Did I call my investment guy? All these things. So you throw up, you're getting taxes done as your first thing, but then in that is like a bunch of other things. So you write all those bunch of other things down individually and you throw those up too. So if you can imagine a column where you have getting taxes done is the big thing, and then you've got 15 different little tasks that you can do. And then you can take all those little things, and you can rearrange them, right? So if down here it says, make sure that all the medical files are together. Well, you already have all those medical files, and you know that they're somewhere around the house, but you put them in 2 different spots, and you just need to do that, right? It's only going to take probably 4 minutes to walk from the one place that you stash them sometimes and the other place that they're supposed to be stashed, and just combine those right now. So that one that you can do right away comes up to the top. And what we do is we put possibilities. We have all these items that have to be done in order to get the taxes done. And it's going to be any project: make Play-Doh, get a new swing, anything. So we have all these, learn multimedia art, whatever. We have all the possibilities, and then that one that's only going to take 4 minutes and I can accomplish right now goes up into the next column, which is going to be ready, right? Like there's nothing preventing me from doing this. Like, get the information from tax guy, not ready.
Mm-hmm.
I have to call that guy, I have to talk to his secretary, I have to schedule an appointment, he has to dig up his things, like that's so far off. So that stays down here in the bottom of possibilities. But call tax guy, that could be ready,
Mm-hmm.
right? To schedule the appointment. So then you make another postie that goes into ready that says call tax guy. How long is it going to take to talk to the secretary? Only a couple minutes. You just ring up the number, talk to her, schedule it, and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So those 2 things you can get done within the next 10 minutes. If you have 10 minutes, bam, you could get something done on this. So whereas get your taxes done feels really overwhelming and like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. And you've got literally 15 to 20 posties of things that have to be done. That feels weighty. But 2 minutes to merge those 2 medical files, super doable. Call up the secretary and make a schedule, super doable. So you do that. And then you take that you move that postie from the ready. Once it's done, you call and you're talking to the secretary, you schedule the appointment, right? And then you move it over to done. Okay, that's done. I called the secretary. But what has that done? Now you know on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, you have an appointment with Guy. So you write that on a Post-it note, and that comes back over here into ready because you got an appointment you got to show up for, right? And then you're going to calendar that and do all the other things. It's not you're not doing it yet, but it's ready. So that flow, that traffic flow is the Kanban tool, where you are just breaking things down into their smallest possible components and moving forward on things without feeling overwhelmed or not knowing what's going to happen, or like all those things a little tiny 5-year-old can break down. Like, is there anything that you can do right now? And it just makes projects really easy when they think about like, well, we want new playground equipment. That's way, like, nobody can wrap their heads around that. But then you break it all out and all of a sudden there's a bunch of stuff that can happen. So it's really nice. And that translates, the example that we gave is an adult example of doing taxes. We're doing that process every day with all the kids. And so they prioritize, it naturally ends up prioritizing itself, because the things that they want to, if they want to spend time on it, then they know what is next in the series of events.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine how different growing up would be with such organization. It's like, where you are. In fact, if you think of something crazy that you want to do that seems crazy or big, that whole system could break it down into pieces that you can just make it your reality in a way that's like, I don't even think I've done that. I haven't done that. I haven't.
It's really nice. It's really smooth. And what it does is it kind of releases like your creative juices and your empowerment to take on projects that used to feel not possible to do. So if you can get into the flow and you think like, if you're practicing this from the time you're 5, what are you capable of doing when you're 18? It's pretty amazing.
There's such a know-how to accomplish anything.
Anything.
And
Yeah.
just imagine like that is there, but there's a self-knowing through all of the times that you've gone through the steps that you know yourself and how you, oh my gosh, by the time you're 18. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of years of practice. And, they talk about the 10,000 hour rule where you're like, if you just get to 10,000 hours, you're a genius in this, right? Like, so if you're able to use these tools for 12 years, that's a phenomenal number of hours that you've started on just, basically it's project management, right? And if you think of your life is the project, and you know how to manage that, was so amazing, which is why I think the children who've gone through this program go on to live really phenomenal lives, doing weird things, like maybe they're a mortician, or they're doing like normal everyday, I say weird because it doesn't necessarily have to be like this super amazing phenomenal, maybe they're a cosmetologist. But the thing that they are is an amazing cosmetologist. They're an amazing mortician. They do it at full capacity. Whatever they do, they do fully, which there's just a lot of power in doing something well and with passion and just loving it. You're only doing it because you love it. Like, you bring so much more to the table. And then if you know how to manage that as well, it's pretty beautiful.
At that point, you're helping other people manage theirs, perhaps, and then we're talking leadership, if you can do that.
Yeah.
And there was something in there too, that you had mentioned, new tools. Are the kids taking these tools and evolving them? Is that maybe what you were saying, or no?
Yeah, I think, they do create new things. They see needs. They know how to address a need. If they feel like something's missing from their life, then they know how to add it in. They know how to problem solve, right? So they know how to do that. A great example is our culture creation process. So for all Agile Learning Centers, we all use community mastery boards, is what they're called. And so we have meetings where we are going over our culture, the things that we want our space to reflect relationally or just in the space, all these things, right? But every single week, or maybe a couple times a week, we have to be in a meeting to intentionally build that culture. Well, meetings suck. Like, nobody likes a meeting. Nobody wants to be in a meeting, especially not a kid, because they have like self-respect still. They're like, no, you can't make me do this. So there's a tool that all of us use now, which is created by one of our kids, 14 years old. And he was like, these meetings are dull and boring and long, and we're wasting time. So he saw the need, and he designed, basically he turned it into a game in his mind. He was a gamer. And so in his mind, if this meeting were a game, what would the rules of the game be? And so he's turned all of our meetings into something that we go into the game knowing what the game is, what the design of the game is, and how to master the game. Like, if you think of the meeting as a game, right? Basically, winning the game is that you got all of your information communicated properly and you didn't waste time, right? So that's winning the game of meetings. Like, everybody knows what they came here to do. Any assignments that needed to happen were assigned effectively, and nobody wasted any time. Those are the objectives. So we have game masters for our meetings. They are the ones who are going to design the meeting, because each meeting you're trying to accomplish like a little different thing, right? So it has to be a little different, organized differently. And the game master lays out that design. They say, okay, in this meeting, we're all going to be in a circle, because that design is going to facilitate what we're trying to do in this meeting. Well, who knows what we're trying to do? The game master knows that. These are our objectives that we're going to be accomplishing in this meeting. And so being in a circle is going to accomplish that. And this is a connecting meeting. So we need to all connect. And so there's on the game board, there's actually a board that we use for this. On the game board is, what's the goal of this meeting? Why are we all sitting here? We're here to connect. Or are we here to disseminate information? Or are we here to make a decision? Or are we here, right? There's like a ton of different things you could want to accomplish. So the game master sets all of that up, and then they communicate that to the group. So, hey, we start the meeting at a time. We're started, and this is what we're going to accomplish. This is what our bodies are going to look like in this. This is how we're going to communicate with each other. So is there just one speaker? Basically, we're all here to absorb knowledge from this one person. So that person is going to speak. Are we in a intermixed? So maybe we're going to have a talking stick that we're going to pass around. Are we going to each take a turn? Everybody has something to say on this, and we all need to be heard. So we're going to do that. There's a lot of different ways, but it is actually finite. Like, there's only 6 or 7, maybe 8 ways that you can talk in, any kind of form. So we just lay all of that stuff out, and everybody knows, everybody's on the same path. And then the facilitator is up there. The game master says, this is how the meeting's going to be run. The facilitator then has the floor to facilitate whatever information is, whatever's happening. And then when you have people who maybe forgot that this is how the game's being played right now, and
that might happen.
You get a little side conversation over here.
Mm-hmm.
The whole room is informed about what this is supposed to be looking at like, and the whole room is playing the game in that way. And they know that they're going to win the game fastest if they play the game in this manner. And so you get somebody next door who's like, hey, we're on talking stick. It's not your time to talk. Wait for the talking stick. Because they know that that's how we win the game. And they hold it pretty strongly and are like, everybody needs to follow what we're doing. And then you have the facilitator talking, and they don't necessarily have to interrupt what they're doing to say, hey, this is what's happening, can you please whatever. Instead, you get everyone in the group helping with that, and you have a game master who's up with the game board, and they can kind of catch the eye and be like, hey, we're on talking stick, so you're going to want to wait until you have the talking stick. So it's just so smooth, so quick, so easy, and it flattens out the like authority or telling someone what to do doesn't really exist. It's just, we've all come into this meeting, we all agree we have a really deep shared need to get the heck out of this meeting. And so based on all of our shared need to do that, this is what we're going to follow. And it's so beautiful and created by a 14-year-old. So we use it in our kid meetings, we use it in our trainings with adults, we use it all over the place. I mean, they're just invaluable tools. So yeah, new tools coming up all the time, and really, really fun and beautiful and just so effective and fast. So it's exciting.
Wow, that really is just a big fruit from the tree there on the scene. Those meetings, are they meetings that everybody who attends them have a vested interest in, or are they part of any community meetings that you need to do as a community no matter what?
Yes. You mean, do we use the boards on optional meetings and meetings that everyone's
I actually am asking about optional versus non-optional. What is that?
So that looks different on every site. and it can look different based on the humans that you're working with as well. So generally, I'll just generally, because it can look different. Your morning meeting where you set your day and go over like the schedules. We do a stand-up meeting. Calling it a stand-up meeting is how it's supposed to be, right? Like you should just be standing in front of your board. Everything should be there, and you just read off what's there. It should not take very long. So being required to stand there and listen to that shouldn't strain anyone, and it generally doesn't. If your stand-up meetings get too long, that's like something you need to address generally, and we don't really feel like anyone should be compelled to come and spend any, like, really it should be quick. So you have those meetings that should be very quick, but even in that, right, so we do require that you come to that meeting. But in that, if we have somebody who had a really bad morning at home and they got rushed and they lost their shoes and all these things happened, right? And they came in and were already like emotionally strained and whatnot, then we're not gonna press that, go take some time for yourself, breathe, just, restart your day. And it's not, so mandatory is very much respecting the individuals who are there. Other kids who have been really compelled in things, that they might be coming out of a situation where they're just really having a lot to recover from, and they feel really oppressed from their previous situation. They can come up to us and ask, or they can come later and check the schedule. It's not something that we're going to violate their how they feel about things in order to do that. And we just try to keep it short enough that it's not something anyone wants to miss, because it's information there. And so you want to be there to know that. And then we have our culture creating, where people are bringing awarenesses of problems that they might be experiencing in the space. We do require that everybody be there to just give a thumbs up or thumbs down on how they feel like our current practices are working for them, so that we get a general feel of how everybody's doing. Again, personality, how your day is going, things like that. There's flexibility within that, but we do really encourage everybody to be at that one. We do try to keep it as short as possible. Just read off, this is what we're practicing. How does it feel? And then just get a temperature read on everybody. And then we also, in that meeting, go over anything that is going to be talked about for creating a new piece of the culture, right? So if was no room on the lunch table, and somebody couldn't eat because everybody's lunches were out, we're just going to say, hey, we're going to be talking about lunch table agreements. Then there's a follow-up meeting after that, which is completely optional. You can come, you can talk all day long about what might be a great idea to solve the lunch table problem, or you don't have to show up to that. So that's completely just whether you care about it or not. And if you don't choose to be in the meeting and have your voice heard, it's also an agreement that you will follow whatever, like you're agreeing to whatever the people who care decide. Yeah. And then if it works out that it's not working for you, you agree to practice it for 1 week, and then you'll show up to the meeting next week because you're like, no way, this is terrible. I hated this. And then you'll bring your voice. So it works out pretty well.
What was the name of that meeting?
That is our culture meeting. So we have change up and check-in. And I say those opposite every time, but you first do the check-in, and that's where you go over your practices and get how everybody feels about stuff, and then let everyone know these are the things we're going to be talking about. And then you do your change up, and that's where you change everything up, get your new agreements, and talk about anything that needs to be done.
And that's one meeting. You check in and then you change whatever was in place. You change it up.
You start the meeting for check-in.
Yeah.
Check in with everybody. That's one meeting. And then you close that meeting out. Everyone who is not interested in the next meeting leaves. And then you open the next meeting, which is change up.
And change up is different than culture, the culture meeting?
Change up is what builds the culture.
Okay, that is the name of the culture meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And those happen early in the day?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so just to clarify the mandatory piece, like when you come into a free to learn or agile community, does this pertain to the question today? What is mandatory? Just really quick, what is mandatory?
It's mandatory to hold our 4 agreements, which are respect yourself first. You're the only person who knows what you need. And so it's really important for you to communicate that and hold that space for yourself.
Mhm.
Respect each other, respect the space, and respect the stuff.
Yeah.
So there's our 4 agreements. Those are mandatory. If you feel unable to hold any of those, we will call your parent immediately to come pick you up. So not a problem, right? It's your choice to be there or not, but definitely if you choose not to engage in those practices, then I think my electricity just went off.
We had a little bit of a technical problem there. We were talking about mandatory stuff that in the communities, mandatory meetings, and there was the 4 agreements. They get to choose to be in the space or not. And once they choose to be in the space by agreeing to those 4 agreements, which were really quick.
Respect yourself, respect each other, respect the space, and respect the stuff.
Bam, choose, are you in or are you out? Can you handle that? And then from there, what else is a mandatory meeting or mandatory anything in your community?
Yeah, so other things that are mandatory are that stand-up meeting in the morning that we're gonna go over the schedule. Should be real quick and not be a huge infringement on your day. And then we also do spawn, which is from Minecraft. The idea of spawning is where you like return after you've lived your life and you've died, you go back to the same point. We find that that's a really big relationship and connection point for us. And that's where we as facilitators have a chance to check in as a smaller group with everybody. We set our intentions in the morning and then we do a reflection in the afternoon. So on our site this year, we broke that up into 2 different like afternoon spawn. There was a bunch of kids who wanted to connect and really deepen, and we did some connection questions and they were loving that piece so much. But then there were other kids who didn't want to do that. You know, they were just ready to go on to their other things. So we broke it out for intentions and reflections. You need to be there in the group during that time. It can take, you know, if somebody's feeling anxious and wants to get out of that quickly, we can run that like 5 minutes and we'll be done with that. It can take up to a half an hour if they're all feeling it and they're wanting to share and talk, and you know, so you just kind of feel out the group on that day as to how long that meeting goes and what everybody feels comfortable about. But it can be as short as 5 minutes. So it's very potentially very short mandatory piece. And then within that, your body does have to be in the room for that, but you always have the option to pass and not share your intentions or your reflections. So
is the intentions and reflections the spawn meeting?
yeah, that's where
They are the same.
Spawn is where we set intentions, and then you go back to spawn in the afternoon. So you have a morning spawn and an afternoon spawn. You set your intentions in the morning and you share your reflections in the afternoon.
Is this in a different headspace than the check-in? Okay, is the stand-up meeting the check-in?
No, these are all, so far we've talked about 5 meetings. There's
Okay.
stand-up meeting, there's check-in, there's change-up, and there's morning spawn and afternoon spawn.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, and in light of talking about how students prioritize their interests and goals, I'm glad that you got to the spawn, because you'd mentioned early on that you reflect. And so can you explain how that is part of them prioritizing their goals and intentions?
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's a really scientifically proven fact that people who are doing the things that they want to be doing, spending their time doing, like maybe big projects or things that they're really passionate about. Either one of those, right? Depending on your values, you would value something that's just big and affects most of the world or whatever. So those people who our culture deems as successful, right? They're working on a big project or they're doing something that they really love and it's having an impact. All of those people have been actually scientifically reported as having one of their main shared practices that they all do is they reflect on what is going on in their process.
mhm.
So to have 5, 6, 7, 8, 11-year-olds doing a reflection process so that they get that into, like, I lived my day. How do I feel about it? Did I accomplish what I wanted to do? Did I change course and accomplish something that was way better? Or did I change course and accomplish something that really I hated? And then it gives you just a time, like a point in time where you can choose a different path if you're interested in a different path, or the same path if that's working for you. So that is our reflection. And it is not required. You don't have to do that, but it is modeled. We do it as facilitators. Most everyone loves to share. We all, as a community, as humans, we really love. It's a point of sharing what we did and connecting with other people to hear what they did. It's a great relationship building time to hear what everyone did, but sometimes you don't want to say what you were working on. Sometimes you don't feel like talking or whatever. And so you can always choose to just pass. And then we also, a lot of times, will do what we call just rosebud thorn, which is sharing something that was your rose for the day, something beautiful that you really loved, your bud, something that you learned, or something that you're excited for that's coming up. And then a thorn, which is something that was challenging in your day. And that, for us as facilitators, again, is a point for us to connect with everybody in the room. Like, we had no idea that you were experiencing this really big problem, but when 3 people say that was their thorn for the day, they worked it out. But is there a point where we can walk alongside and maybe just share more deeply with what they've got going on there? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I could see without those meetings, like without, for example, the spawn meeting, we could just go in and out of our days without having looked at any reflection of ourselves at all. And it's crazy because it's all centered around that. You're self-reflecting, and so you're actually having to stop everything and like look and notice, and then that's invaluable. And then if you're in a community, these other people get to understand parts of that if you're willing to share it, and that's really community building.
Yeah, it really is. And that's why I say, like, Spawn is so much about relationships, like really your relationships. Your hearts are woven together as you live those days. And you can do, like, all of this happens in life, right? We're going along, we're making our choices. Eventually you will reflect and be like, that didn't work for me, or this did work for me. But just having an intentional time at the end of each day where you are just going to check in with your headspace and see how that felt is so great. And it does really speed up how easily it is to connect with other humans, and how quickly a potential project might progress, right? Because if you're not doing those check-ins, and say you want to get a new apartment and you're thinking, yeah, I really want to get a new apartment, 3 weeks could go by before you realize like you still have never called anyone.
Yeah.
But if you checked in every single one of those 3 weeks, every one of those days, then you're like, wow, I'm really feeling this. It just kind of really spotlights what you want in your life. And I mean, that, like you say, it is really invaluable. It proves. Or after 3 weeks, when you're like, oh my gosh, I still haven't called the person, and you've said that to yourself for 3 weeks, you start thinking like, actually, I don't really care about getting an apartment. Like, I actually really am enjoying staying here with my parents, and my parents really like having me here. And there's all these things that I don't have to do when I'm here, and all these things that I get to do. And I'm really comfortable with the job that I have, and I don't really want to do this. And so you intentionally take it off your list. Whereas if you weren't checking in, right, that's potentially just going to stay on your list for the next 3 years. And you're going to feel like, oh man, I'm not doing what I want. But it turns out it's not what you want, right? It just got on your list because everyone else was doing it, but you never reflected, you never reviewed with yourself what you wanted. You never looked at it every single day. And after a certain number of days, you know, like, I don't care about this. I don't know. Maybe you don't know why, but you know, no, cross that off. Just let it go. Maybe next time.
Wow.
So, and as an adult, I think a lot of times we think like, oh, I really care about this. This is really important to me. You know, dusting my baseboards, I care about that. But guess what? When I check in all the time, do I really care about that?
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, and you know why? Because I'm going to move. I'm moving in 3 months. I don't need to dust my baseboards. It's not a thing. So there's a bunch of stuff where we're actually living under the weight of things that we think we care about because we never looked at them, reviewed them, and said, oh no, we don't care about that. That's not a thing.
Yeah. So it can go either way.
Yeah.
Without reflection, you'll never really know, you know, take that time to reflect. You'll never really know if it was a move forward or just stop.
Right. Exactly. So,
and to be able to have the opportunity to do that as a kid, these kids won't even know the difference. They will have nothing to compare an alternative to than the one that they're living when they're, you know, being able to do these things. So I think we may have covered how students prioritize their interests and goals. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add about that? What about anything you see or experience, you know, some summation?
you know, I think the only thing that maybe we didn't really delve into is that you can't prioritize or weigh out anything unless you're free to let it go completely. So that freedom element of allowing them to choose how they spend their days, allowing I don't want to do that at all to be a viable option, right? So you can't necessarily apply this principle to its fullest glory on something that they don't have the option to get out of. So that's a really important piece that, you know, if I try to take this element into a traditional school setting, and I'm going to say, okay, now you kids, we are all going to prioritize your days. The fact that they don't have a choice as to what their days look like is going to shift their priorities quite significantly, right? So they don't function in the process. You can like push it along, but that's going to be me telling them what they need to prioritize. Like, well, you have to get science done today, and so you need to do this and this and this and this, right? But because if they don't care about science on that day or that project or whatever, they're innate. The beauty of this is that it comes from within, and that isn't released to, you know, its real full potential unless they have the choice to say, no, I'm not going to share at the end of the day. I'm not going to reflect. And maybe I'm not going to reflect at the end of the day for the next year. This entire school year might go on, and every single time it gets to me, I say pass. And that's okay. You know, if you have a 6th grader whose only intention was to eat a bite of his sandwich, that's great. When you find out 2 years later that he had been bullied about his lunches and had stopped eating completely, you realize like, wow, how great was that, that was what we were holding space for. Every single day we were crazy, off the charts excited about his bite of his sandwich that he was going to eat. We didn't require him to eat more. We didn't set a time when he had to eat that bite of sandwich. There was nothing. We didn't even ask about like, why is this your intention? For the whole year, there was no other intention except for eat a bite of your sandwich. So the fact that we held space for that, we didn't know what we were holding space for until afterward. But when you see, there was actually a huge healing that was happening in the bite of sandwich. And every day when we came back to our reflections, we said to him, did you eat your sandwich? Where did you take a bite? And sometimes he had taken 2 bites, and sometimes he had eaten the whole sandwich. And everyone partied and celebrated and was so excited. And the little artists were drawing pictures of the sandwiches. And, you know, everybody was connected, and we were all here. We're all supporting you in taking your one single bite of your sandwich. Turns out it's a huge thing. But there's no way that we can know what's going on in the world of another person, really, and to make a judgment that that's not a good enough intention. Like, that's not good enough. You need to work on something else. It's not our call, right? We don't know what's going on. And so to allow that freedom so that he knew that his priority needed to be healing that weird food thing that he had experienced, right? And he spent an entire year on it. And then it bled into the next year too, but it was a lot easier and a lot more gentle the next year for him. And it was just, you know, something fun and silly that he had connected with everyone on. And so he went in that. It was a great thing to bring back. But yeah, the freedom to choose allows them to spend their time on the things that are the most important, and that we don't get to decide that, because I didn't even know that he was having a food problem. So it's really important.
Thank you. I am really moved by that story, and just enlightened even more about how that space can serve the soul of a person.
Yeah.
And it, you know, as a little bit of a skeptic at heart, it really feels like it has released some fear over like, what if they don't do this or that, or learn this or that? Like, it's like the what ifs about not doing traditional school. After you've told, during the time that you were telling that story, the what ifs just completely lightened and just kind of drifted away, because are you serious? Like, that's all I care about. Like, really, the base of a human, like my kids, you know, like they can learn anything they want to. It's the age of information, but to have the time and space to be, and to, it's just like, wow, thank you. That really, really helped me personally.
Yeah, and it really is true. They know, right? They know. He didn't like meet with me and set his intention like, I'm really struggling about this food thing, and so I would just like to focus on it this year because it's really important to me. So if I could build all of my relationships this year based on this food thing, that would really make a difference for me. He didn't do that. That's not a thing. And he didn't even have the wherewithal. Like, obviously we don't do things like that, but he was in the environment where we trusted that his heart knew. He knew.
Yeah.
And if you just allow for that and celebrate those things, what a beautiful picture it can be.
Wow, it makes it all so less scary to really. Anyway, I'm deciding whether to commit to our little private journey here at home. So it's like, it's so helpful.
They know for sure. They know what to spend their time on. They know the things that are important to them. And look, my son, speaking of meetings and prioritizing things, this is the meeting, the message that I just
Who slipped that to you? The older or younger?
Older. At noon is our check-in meeting.
Oh, wow.
And so it's valuable to them, right? We're home. They realize like, hey, if we don't check in, we miss stuff. So let's do it. So he's
Oh my gosh. Well, hey, on that note, why don't we just bring it to a close? We're complete on this session, right?
Yeah, so good. It was
Awesome.
perfect.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I got another wave of what you're doing here. A wave, it's just love. It's just love, a picture of love that we don't just get to see and experience in the world. Like, it's just unique, but it's always there and available.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fun.
All right. Well, thank you, Emily.
All right,
And
thank you.
we'll talk to you the next time. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, bye.
Bye.